Oh my god, that's really good. And that is apple cider vinegar.
No, vinegar.
It's not apple cider vinegar, it's just apple cider. Yeah, it's really good. So today's movie review is all about 365 days. This movie came out in 2020 and it was really highly watched in America and actually all across the world, Switzerland, loads of places. I think a lot of people were hate watching it more than actually enjoying it. They were watching it because of the hype. At the moment, I've really gotten a taste for torturing myself with movies that are really bad and seeing how much I can stomach. Clearly not very much. I tried watching 50 Shades of Grey and I'll link that video down in the description, but that was a painful experience that I do not want to relive. I thought that it would be pretty much impossible to find a movie worse than 50 Shades of Grey, and I also watched After and After We Collided again. I really didn't think there could be anything worse until I watched this movie, and it makes all the others look honestly amazing in comparison. And the male love interest in this is so gross and so creepy that he makes Christian Grey look like some sort of wholesome cinnamon bun and God in comparison. So the plot does play into maybe a fantasy a lot of people have, or escapism. You know, you would not want to be in a situation like this in real life, but you're more enjoying, oh, imagine if I was in this situation and I was taken out to all these amazing restaurants and shopping sprees and some handsome mafia boss kidnapped me, how romantic. But a lot of people know they would never actually want something like that to happen to them in real life because it would be very traumatic. So I'm aware that maybe this movie is not meant to be actually taken seriously. Today we'll be looking at this movie and also some of the dangerous cliches or tropes it presents, such as the abductor to lover subject and Stockholm Syndrome. I do worry for the teenagers that watch it and maybe not know how to differentiate between real life and the media and the imaginary world, because when you're a teenager sometimes you do find it hard to know what you should know to be realistic and what's not real, especially if you've never been in a relationship and you don't know what that's like. When you watch a movie like this, you might think it's okay if someone you're dating treats you like this, and that's where the problem comes in. So I'll link it in the description and up here, but you can check out my TV shows playlist. I've watched shows like Emily in Paris and Bridgerton, and also my movie playlist where I give the walk of shame for all the terrible movies I've watched. Now let's talk about 365 days. So the film opens with Massimo, who is a member of the Italian mafia, and he watches a beautiful woman on a beach. He doesn't know her, he just watches her. Massimo's dad drops this really incredible feminist line: beautiful women are heaven for the eyes, hell for the soul, and purgatory for the wallet. The dealers shoot Massimo and his father, and Massimo survives while his father dies from his injuries. Oh no, he shall be greatly missed. And 5 years later, Massimo is now the leader. Laura, a fiery executive, is unhappy in her relationship with her boyfriend Martin, and she's never met Massimo, but you get the feeling that at some point their stories will collide. And meanwhile, Massimo is on a plane and for some reason convinces the air hostess to give him a BJ. The writers are compensating for something, and that's a problem I have with this whole movie, is that there are all these weird scenes that feel totally out of place and unnecessary and don't lead to anything. Like, a lot of the movie is very inconsequential and it's like a series of moments and events strung together in order. You see Laura doing really well at work and putting people in their place, and you get the vibe that she's quite a feisty woman, quite a powerful woman. So Laura goes abroad and celebrates her 29th birthday in Italy with her boyfriend Martin and her best friend, and she's looking for the bathroom at some point, and suddenly Massimo is there, steps out of the darkness and gets way too close to her than is appropriate, and says probably the most cursed line in the entire movie: "Are you lost, baby girl?"
Are you lost, baby girl?
He repeats it at multiple points. I don't know why. I think it's meant to be attractive.
Are you lost, baby girl?
Oh my god, yeah. It's even worse the second time. Yeah, that happened. She must have either hallucinated that or he's got some insane spy training, because she turns away and starts to walk down the path. I would be very uncomfortable if someone had said that to me and come up so close, so I'm not sure I would turn my back to them, because then you can't see them anymore. And then she stops and turns back around to see where this strange man has gone, and he has completely disappeared, which is practically impossible to do in such a short space of time. So I think he must have tiptoed around the corner and then dived headfirst into the bushes. That's the only explanation. Laura breaks up with her boyfriend because he's investing no time in her or her birthday, and so she spends an evening by herself crying, I suppose. I honestly watched this a few times. I rewatched that sequence because it was very poorly put together and unclear in terms of the transition of where she goes, because one minute she's broken up with him and then there's this sad music playing and her standing on this terrace crying, and then it's really dark and she's by herself walking through the streets at night. I don't know why, I don't know where her friend's gone, I don't know if she's lost. She looks quite confused because she's looking around in a disoriented way. Suddenly a man appears and I couldn't see if it was Massimo or not, it was too dark, and then he says good evening, and gradually the screen dissolves to be black. And it was extremely anticlimactic, and normally the kidnapping itself is the most exciting, intense part of the movie, and there's a really intense build up. I don't care if the movie's bad. I knew it was going to be bad when I went into it, but at least make the kidnapping exciting or scary, because it was neither of those things. You don't see what happens because the screen goes black. The next thing you know, she's waking up in this strange room. It looks like a castle or a palace or some big manor, and she has no idea where she is, and her level of calm is honestly inspirational. She is so chill. She's just not bothered. She's not panicking, she's not screaming, she's not hyperventilating. My first instinct would be to, you know, try and open the window and jump out or something, but she just looks around, takes in her surroundings and strolls downstairs, and there is a massive painting of her on the wall, like something from a freaking horror movie. It was terrifying. That does seem to finally actually freak her out, and I saw some human emotion on her face because she was looking like a robot. Then she sees Massimo. I get he's meant to be this attractive bad boy, intimidating mafia boss. I mean, to be fair, he is way more intimidating than Christian from 50 Shades of Grey. He does actually seem like someone who's used to getting what he wants, who's quite dominating. He seems to whisper a lot of his lines. There's something just very irritating about him as opposed to intimidating or suave, so I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but he is an improvement from Harden from After, so I'm not going to judge too harshly. But then he again repeats the "Are you lost, baby girl" line. Is that a pickup line? His dialogue is so bad it really detracts from me being able to take the actor seriously.
Are you lost, baby girl?
And then he tells her like twice he won't touch her without her permission, but it's actually quite comical. Continually throughout this movie, he proceeds to touch her without her permission. So what's the point of him saying that if then he keeps touching her in really creepy ways? She was the woman at the beach 5 years ago, and that when he was injured, all he could think about was her, and he had this weird hallucination of her being really close to him and looking at him, and I guess in his dying moments that really just stuck with him. So when he got better, he was like, who the hell was that woman at the beach? She keeps haunting me. And he was searching for her for years, and then when he finally found her, he kidnapped her, and it was just a chance encounter that he managed to finally find her again. And I think that's meant to be romantic to us. That was very disappointing to me. I hoped at least that his reason for kidnapping her would be more of a circumstances type scenario where for some reason he had to kidnap her. It was nothing to do with being attracted to her or liking the look of her. He just had to, and they were pushed together out of coincidence maybe. But no, he intentionally stalked her, or tried to stalk her, sought her out, was obsessed with this idea of her. Then he says he's intending to keep her as a prisoner for 365 days in the hopes that she will fall in love with him, and if not, he'll let her go. Rather than saying, you know, a year, he says 365 days, which You would not specify that. You just say, I'll keep you here for a year, but all right. And Laura, to be fair, is very frustrated and angry about this. And she says, I'm not an object. It doesn't work like that. And then he says, I know. That's why I'm giving you a chance to fall in love with me. And his response confused me so much. I had to rewatch it a few times because what does that even mean? She says, I'm not an object. He says, I know. That's why I'm giving you a chance to fall in love with me. That just doesn't make sense somehow as a response to what she said. But anyway, I'd understand if they had a connection, like they actually knew each other before his father died, and maybe they had a really meaningful conversation right before his father died. So as a result, she really stuck with him, but they didn't even know each other. She was a random girl he glanced down at for 2 seconds at the beach, and then his dad died. There was no correlation really between those events. There was no attachment there or spiritual connection there or something. So that again logically does not make sense. It actually made a lot more sense in the Nicholas Sparks movie The Lucky One. Zac Efron plays this US soldier and he finds a picture of a young woman on the ground just before there's this bomb attack that happens where it kills many people around him, and luckily not him. And his squad mates declare the woman in the picture as Logan's guardian angel. And so he was obviously suffering from survivor's guilt, PTSD. He was haunted by his experiences, but the one thing that he can hold on to is this, I guess, fantasy of the woman in the photo and how she saved him and what she means to him. And yeah, it's a bit creepy, but I think it makes sense in some ways because he has an idea that he could go to the lighthouse where she is in the picture and maybe he'll meet her there. It's not as creepy, first of all, because you feel bad for him, but also it just logically makes sense. You could imagine someone being in that situation and they've lost everything. They could not go any lower, but the one thing they can hold on to is that maybe this woman somehow saved them in some weird way. Whereas with this, in this movie, his reasoning for being so attached to her makes no sense. Massimo says she was having an allergic reaction to something, the sedative. I don't know. First of all, he's a mafia boss. He should know what he's doing. Why is she having an allergic reaction to something? I just found that really funny and stupid. But also then he says, you need to suck on this ice cube. He could just hand it to her and say, here you go, this might help. But he like puts it in her mouth and starts running his finger over her lip without her permission in a very creepy way. I was extremely uncomfortable at multiple points in this movie. I had to pause it and go and do something else because the whole movie has a very predatory vibe to it, like Ted Bundy had written it, you know? And I was looking up who the author was because I was sure it had to be some creepy guy who still lives in his mom's basement or something, but a woman wrote this. So I'm worried for her, prayers for her. I hope she's doing well. Actually, can I just say the way he would touch her at multiple points in this movie is extremely creepy. When it seemed like she was not in the mood to be touched, or when she was actually angry at him and so actually did not know him and disliked him and would not want to be touched, and then he was touching her. And he also had a very strange obsession, I think it was on the director's part, of her neck specifically. Like at multiple points when he was angry, he would grab her by the throat, or when they were kissing, he'd grab her by the throat. She gets annoyed and says she does not want to fall in love with him over 365 days. And again, she does not seem how I'd imagined her to be. She doesn't seem terrified, flight or fight mode, life or death situation, scared, adrenaline's running. No, she just seems more vaguely cross and indignant, as if maybe the pizza delivery man was late with her order and she's like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, I'm sorry, I overcharged you. And she's like, well, you were late. Come on, you need to do better next time. Who's your boss? That sort of thing. Just like irritated, snappy, but not like she's being held hostage with some strange man who says he's in love with her and wants her to fall in love with him. She's not scared for her life, and I think in this situation most women would be. So she's saying stuff to try and empower herself and make this movie sound less disgusting than it is, saying things like, I'm not a sack of potatoes you can move around. How dare you do this to me? As if she has any kind of power in this situation when she clearly doesn't. Look, if you're gonna make him this creepy mafia boss, at least show that he's in control, he's great at his job, even though his job is so messed up. He's not even that. He just comes across as a creepy stalker who has some serious obsessive tendencies and has some serious deficiencies, so he can't get a girl in his own life to actually like him and want to date him. So instead he has so much free time, he can spend years stalking down this woman he barely knows, and there's nothing attractive about that. So he doesn't even have the attractiveness factor. She also says, I've got my own life, I'm a businesswoman, I've got a boyfriend, I'm not going to sit here and give you a chance and go and hang out with you and your mafia friends and fall in love with you. I'm going home. He's obviously annoyed at the mention of the boyfriend because he brings out some photos of her boyfriend with another woman, very graphic photos of them together in bed, and he says, look, this is what your boyfriend was actually doing this morning. It's not that he was busy or the excuse he gave you. No, he was with another woman, so get angry. This was extremely creepy for multiple reasons, one of which being, how did he get these photos? Like, was he in the bedroom watching Laura's boyfriend taking pictures, or has he been stalking Laura's boyfriend? If so, for how long? And then she's again expressing her frustration, not anger, frustration over being kidnapped, still in a disturbingly calm and collected way. Her complacency suggests that on some level she is not too bothered about being kidnapped, and this is a pattern throughout the movie, a real male fantasy we see throughout the years of men assuming that women secretly like having bad things happen to them, or they secretly like being stalked or disrespected by men, and so therefore men should keep doing it. It's a way to justify their own gross behavior. She's complaining, she's saying let me go, and so again Massimo touches her without her permission. It's actually ridiculous how many times he does this. Pushes her onto the bed, grabs near her chest in a very inappropriate way because obviously she was not consenting to that, fetishizing and glamorizing women being disempowered. He's angry. Diego is here today and he is very angry about this movie. It sucks, doesn't it? It's a bad movie. And my cat's here. Ooh, all the animals are here today. What are you doing? So as I was saying, there are multiple moments where she seems to want to assert her authority, but no matter what, Massimo is always in control. No matter how hard she tries to fight or to resist, he is just completely unbothered. He's still in control. He's still on top every time. That is extremely disturbing because it's meant to be portrayed as sexy and romantic, that he is always just dominant in every situation, but it's really creepy. When someone does what he does, they grab you by the neck, they push you onto the bed, they start touching your lip with their hand and kidnapped you, you will be screaming, you'll be struggling a little bit more, you might scratch them, you might try and push them off you a lot harder, you may spit in their face. It won't be sexy, it will just be very messy and chaotic and all over the place. But every time he grabs her by the throat and pins her up against the wall or something, her head's always tilted back in quite like an erotic, sensual way, and he's sort of leaning down over her, and again it's like framing it as this seductive moment. Then she actually gets a chance to grab his gun and shoot him, but she doesn't, and he manages to disarm her, which was such a wasted opportunity and just very disappointing. And he also has another prisoner who has done a lot of bad things in his life, so again this is them trying to show that Massimo actually has some good sides or some kind of moral compass, because his, taking charge of people who've done bad things or who are worse than he is, but that just doesn't work for me. Anyway, Laura sees Massimo shoot this bad guy and is obviously very upset by this. She passes out, and the next morning when she wakes up, Massimo is there shirtless by the bed. Now I understand maybe him watching over her, but he's shirtless. Why is he shirtless? This is going to remain one of the biggest mysteries of our time, because I have no clue why he's shirtless. I still don't know. He basically sits there, it's actually comical, and tries to justify or explain why he killed that guy, saying, oh, he was doing bad things to children, this is why I did it, as if he would give a crap about what Laura thinks of the fact that he killed someone. He's a trained mafia person. He's probably used to this stuff. He probably has people killing people all the time, or is involved in some really dangerous underground stuff, a world of crime. He is not bothered by what he did to this guy. He probably does it on the regular. So why is he sat there trying to explain or justify it? I just thought that was so dumb. Then again, she's annoyed at being kidnapped. So he shoves her onto the bed again, and it's extremely gross. She is obviously upset that he's pushing her onto the bed, and like the queen she is, she slaps him across the face. And he keeps doing this whenever she pisses him off. He'll make this weird exhaling of breath, grunting breathing sound, like after she slaps him, he makes that noise like, oh, I'm angry now, how dare you slap me? And it's trash. And then he says something, is it a different scene? I'm not sure. But then he says, I lose my vigilance when I'm around you. What is that supposed to mean? Is that meant to be like, oh, I'm such a bad guy, but when I'm around you, my soft spots come out and I'm so vulnerable and I just can't freaking deal with it because you make me feel things I've never felt before, and so my guard's down. Then they go shopping together. I don't know why, it wasn't very well explained, but they're out in public with normal people around who could help her or call the police or call for help, but she's out there shopping. She's not looking around like planning an escape. When she's in the dressing room, she's not looking for a way out to get away without getting their attention. She's just really enjoying going shopping. She's trying on clothes, and I'm not sure if it's early enough yet for her to have Stockholm Syndrome. I think it needs to be at least a week. It hasn't been, so I thought that was extremely weird that she's there having this great time. She's walking really confidently too, like, yeah, it's me. It's like, go. And at one point she's trying on lingerie. I don't know why. Massimo just walks in, just helps himself to go and stare at her, and she's like, get out. And he doesn't leave, so again, violating her, and she's running down the street, finally actually running, picking up the pace a bit. She's looking for help. She does see some two police officers and she asks them for help. Then they notice Massimo behind her, and then they just seem to back off. So I don't know whether they were corrupt and secretly working with him, or whether they were actually working with Massimo the whole time, but they were just disguised as police officers. She says, did you really mean it when you said you wouldn't touch me without my consent? And it's like, girl, what do you mean? He's already touched you about 50 times without your consent, so why are you asking that? And he says, yes, I did mean it. But like, now they're both stupid, because what? A few minutes ago, right, she did seem to have some common sense because she's trying to escape, but now she kind of seems to forget about her escape plan, and then she's like, oh, I want you to cook me a better Polish dinner, I want better food. They go out to dinner. For some reason it's just the two of them, I guess because it's him keeping her hostage, and then he comes up to her and says, I'd like you to teach me how to be gentle for you. But for some reason, because I was like, ugh, for some reason that seems to deeply touch her, and she's like, aww. And then she asks for her phone back, her technology back, and he gives it to her. Why? Is he freaking stupid? Is he dumb? Oh my god, because I'm sure she could just call the police, right? He wouldn't have bugged that, so she couldn't. But she calls her mum and she says, hey mum, everything's fine, I've got this business opportunity, don't worry about me. She barely knows him, by the way, so you would not be this invested in him, willing to give up so much for him. I'd understand maybe if she had proper Stockholm Syndrome by this point and she'd been with him for months and she was starting to hate authority figures who were trying to intervene because she was trying to protect her abductor. In this situation, it does not make sense for her to give up her freedom, her liberty, especially when you know the kind of girl she was before, this badass independent workwoman, doing a complete reversal of what she was doing before, because now she's like, yeah, I want to stay and help Massimo be kind. But when he says stuff like, I want to be gentle for you, it's like he has this emotional, spiritual, romantic connection to her. But how can he? All he's ever seen of her is that he thought she was beautiful, so it can't be anything more than finding the person attractive, the fantasy of this person, the possibility, the potential of this person, but that's not the reality. So it's so extremely weird that throughout this movie they're not only trying to sell it as like this hot steamy thing, but also as romance, as passionate, because I think that's what they're doing. They're trying to make it somewhat romantic and emotional, but it does not work considering they don't know each other. So them, for instance, wanting to get married at the end and her going wedding dress shopping feels so extremely jarring, because that suggests you actually want to spend the rest of your life with this person. You know, you appreciate their value as a human being, and I never got that vibe from them until suddenly he's like, will you marry me, later on in the movie. And when she wakes up the next morning, he's sleeping next to her shirtless. I don't know why. She goes up to shower and gets in, and there's another shower like next to her, opposite her. This was the stupidest scene in the whole movie. Massimo just walks in naked and starts showering in the shower next to her. What? I was like, oh my god. At this moment, I think some deep part of me snapped, you know? And she's staring at his body the whole time. And then he's like, so here's our schedule for this week. This is what we're doing later on today. Why did you go in there to shower? What is this? They start showering in the same shower for no reason. And it's awkward because they just stood there looking at each other. He says this creepy stuff like, don't provoke me, I'm used to getting what I want with force. And I think he'd said that because she was in the shower with him but wasn't actually kissing him. She was more sort of teasing him, doing this cat and mouse game, a push and pull, will we, won't we thing, enjoying more the chase of the relationship. But then he was saying, don't provoke me like that. Is there anything attractive about someone saying, I'm used to getting what I want? So he's basically a spoiled child who's never learnt to accept no means no. Anyway, they have their first kiss. He grabs her by the neck to do it and she starts to walk away. So I don't even think that was consensual because she was clearly walking off. So if she wanted to kiss him, don't you think she would have kissed him? Women can go after what they want. I know that sounds crazy, but if a woman wants to kiss you, she might sort of get a bit closer and act like she wants to kiss you rather than turning around and walking off the other way. They're taking a trip, so she has to be forcibly carried onto the plane and tied up. And then Massimo starts touching her in very vulnerable parts of her body without her permission, and she's tied up. So even if she wanted to stop him, she couldn't. So that's so gross that the movie tries to give the perception of consent being there and respect being there, but then never delivers it. And she later starts provoking him and making him angry because she obviously enjoys getting him a bit riled up and hot and heavy, like, oh, will she kiss me? Will she not kiss me? What's she gonna do next? And she likes that part of it, but basically he wants her to pleasure him and she doesn't want to. The door's locked, and then he's annoyed at her because he told her multiple times not to provoke him, like he's an actual child. He brings in this girl and she does to him what he'd wanted Laura to do. And I'm not kidding you, this is real. He chains Laura up on the bed to this device, to this like contraption equipment, and makes her watch as he's doing things with this girl as a way to, I guess, either turn her on or also make her jealous, as if to say, this is what you're missing out on, you know? I bet you wish that you could be in her position. Laura is at this club and she's flaunting herself for Massimo and his friends. The way she tries to lead him on next is she comes down the stairs in this reasonably short dress. The way the men react is honestly disgusting. They're like, oh my god, what are you wearing? Massimo's going to kill you. It's not even that short, by the way. It's really not. So I don't know why everyone was acting like it was so short, because it wasn't. Not see-through up the top or anything, like it's just fully covered up here pretty much. This man at the club starts trying to attack her, so Massimo saves her, but because he's so dumb and terrible at his job, he draws out this gun and draws a lot of attention to himself. And the next day he's really annoyed about that, and he feels like it's Laura's fault for putting him in that situation where he needed to step in and protect her. Massimo says it was her fault anyway, and she was asking for it because she was dressed like a whore. Chasing after her, he's again getting physical with her, trying to grab her, touching her without her permission, I know. Accidentally, she falls into the water and he jumps in to save her. This is framed as like a huge pivotal moment, a catalyst in the movie where it's like a turning point. Oh my god, look how much he's changed, look how much more gentle he's become. First of all, it's not established how he becomes more gentle. Second of all, it's not even that big a deal or that heroic a gesture for him to jump in and save her. I think if on the first day she'd been kidnapped, if she had fallen into the water or hurt herself, he would have helped her because the dude was always basically in love with her and wanted to help her. So of course he wouldn't just let her drown. So that's not even logical, but it's framed as like, oh my god, he's so sweet, he was protecting her. It's really not that big a deal. Like, no, it wasn't. I would understand more if he'd always had this huge phobia of water. She wakes up and he's sitting there shirtless again, who knows why, watching over her. And then he says, why are you so disobedient? Again, something about his voice, I don't know, it just makes me feel all kinds of angry. You'd be obedient if someone kidnapped you and was like, fall in love with me. Like, oh god. So no, she's not going to be obedient, you absolute idiot. Then he says, oh, I was so worried about you, but at the same time I want to kill you. Like, that's sexy. She's wearing nothing at all. Nothing. Why did no one redress her and put a shirt on her or something? Why is she naked? Oh my god, it gave me such a fright. If the writers were self-aware, they just make this a steamy erotica movie, and at least it would be, it is what it is, you know, you like it, you don't like it, just a bit of escapism. But they're trying to incorporate in this romance by him saying, I was so worried about you, my god, and her being like, oh my god, you're so sweet. But there is nothing romantic here, nothing emotional here, nothing respectful here. In 50 Shades of Grey, Anna is this very inexperienced, inexperienced girl. She doesn't have much experience with relationships particularly, and so when she meets Christian, she doesn't really have much learning to know how to judge him in comparison to other guys she's dated. And in Twilight, right, Edward is way too old for Bella because he's like an 100-year-old vampire, but Bella is only around 17, so she's so young and still developing. It would make sense for her first relationship to be a bit all over the place. I'm sure most of us look back on the crushes we had when we were young adults or teenagers and go, wow, that was kind of embarrassing. I don't know what I was thinking, and that wasn't even a real crush, so it makes sense. Whereas in this, she was this boss-ass businesswoman. She had a boyfriend who did not kidnap her, so she sort of had some standards. I mean, not many, but some around relationships. She seemed quite assertive, quite in control. She liked being in control in a lot of ways and being on top of situations. And now suddenly she's being this doormat, and it doesn't work for me. Even if she got Stockholm Syndrome at some point, I thought that at least earlier, when she doesn't have it, she would be pretending to fall in love with him in order to seduce him, to trick him and make him think she genuinely liked him so she could escape. That would make more sense. I think that would be clever, but she's not doing that. Later that evening, they attend a masquerade ball. They have this whole intimate, emotional, romantic dance sequence. So beforehand, there's another shopping and choosing outfits montage. We already had one, but it's like this getting ready sequence, which is so jarring because it feels like something from a chick flick or a fun romance movie, and it's so out of place in this movie. It makes no sense. Context-wise, when you see it, it's like, why is this here? Happy music playing. Oh my god, putting makeup on. Oh, I like this dress. Oh my god. Oh, let's try it on. Oh, so pretty. And it doesn't work, and it's also a waste of time. Reconnecting with her friend, they go to get massages. She's acting like everything's cool. Montage of them going to a hairstylist, getting makeovers. Laura gets a blonde haircut, which looks like absolute steaming hot garbage. The cut doesn't suit her. The color is too light somehow. Like, blonde's fine, but it's very, very blonde, and somehow with her features, it just does not work. It's not flattering. Her old hair looked way better. Massimo and Laura are getting a little bit steamy again, and then she tells him that she loves him and she doesn't need 365 days to know that. The following morning he proposes and she accepts. What is this movie? You don't even know each other. And then there's another unnecessary shopping montage of her trying on outfits, showing him the outfits. Laura says over breakfast she'd like her best friends to come over from Poland for their wedding, so their best friend arrives in Italy in the airport, all excited to see Laura, and Laura reveals she is pregnant, and her friend urges her to tell Massimo about the pregnancy. Then there's another freaking, oh my god, shopping montage of her trying on a wedding dress and being like, oh my god, I'm such a beautiful bride. The pacing, by the way, needs some serious work. This is like the first draft of the movie that never should have got released, because 1 minute it's like they're taking it slow, hating each other, then they just seem to have physical attraction, and suddenly it's like, I'll marry you, oh my god, wedding dress time. What? It jumped from 0 to 100 in the space of about 10 seconds. It's so rushed. There's something to be said about how weird it is with all these constant getting her eyelash extensions put on and going shopping, more shopping montages, because it suggests that she is purely defined by her relationship with Massimo. They're done shopping, so they get in the car to go back, and Laura tells Massimo that they can talk after dinner because she has something important to tell him on the phone, which is obviously that she's pregnant. Mario, was he one of the co-workers of Massimo's? I don't even know, who cares? He receives a call from an informant that the rival mafia family is about to kill Laura, and Massimo's on the phone to Laura at the time, and Laura's phone cuts out. He's like, Laura, are you there? And her car's gone through this tunnel, but it's not coming out the other side. Massimo pretty much knows straight away something really bad's happened. His intuition kicks in. He gets on his knees and starts crying. Then there's this overhead camera shot of that tunnel that Laura never came out from, a police car stopping by the tunnel with the sirens blazing. Now, I know there's like a sequel and maybe another one after that coming out in like 2022. So let's briefly talk about Stockholm Syndrome and the kidnapped turned lover subject you see a lot in movies and the media and books. You might hear about kidnapping, especially of young girls like Elizabeth Smart. These kinds of people sometimes end up bonding with their captors because often it's just them and their captor. They're in a situation where they see different sides of their captor and they're very isolated and brainwashed, so they may start to actually sympathize and bond with their captor. Often if they're in danger, whether it's physical danger or like emotional danger, they feel like if they're kind to their captors, they stay out out of their way. They're like, okay, thank you for bringing me food, and they disempower themselves, and the captor might be nice to them, but as a result that becomes this pattern where sometimes the captor actually reciprocates, of you thinking, wow, they're actually quite a nice captor, they're treating me well, and then you have this weird mental dissonance. And that's a real problem then with this kidnap trope. Who made a video about it? The Pop Culture Detective, I think he did. I watched it ages ago, but he called it like abduction turned romance, which I think is a really good name for this phenomenon, this problem, where someone, especially a woman, is kidnapped, normally by a white man, and it's played as like this romantic thing. The Princess Bride has many elements of this, because at the beginning, Buttercup, the main girl, and I think his name's Wesley, she'd been abducted, so he helped save her by kidnapping her from her previous abductor, but it was still a weird thing to do. He wasn't like, oh, let me help you. He was being creepy about it, and there are just some problematic aspects of that. Not explaining properly why he's kidnapping her to try and reassure her. It's more just like he's doing it and she's completely lost and confused as to what is going on, or he's kidnapped her to save her from a common enemy. And a good example of this is the movie that was recommended to me constantly on my Amazon, specifically called Night and Day, starring Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz. This isn't as creepy as some other movies, but there's an underlying creepiness there that really should be addressed. Basically, Cameron Diaz, or June, is on a plane with Roy, Tom Cruise, and he's a secret agent on the run. He subdues the passengers and flight crew and all the agents who were sent by the bad guys to attack him, and then such a funny scene. I don't know if it was a deleted scene or not that I watched on YouTube, but everyone's like asleep or passed out or has been killed, but she doesn't realize it. She doesn't know he's subdued everyone on the plane, and he says to her, yeah, I just like killed a bunch of people, knocked a bunch of people out, and she stares at him, and then she just starts laughing so hard. It's actually so adorable, because she does not believe him. She thinks he's the biggest comedian ever, because there's no way that's real. Then he basically drugs her at one point for her own safety or something, and then later on kidnaps her for her own safety because he knows the bad guys are after her. But there's still this weird power dynamic there of her saying, I don't want to get in the car, and him saying get in the car and forcing her in, and he is completely in control in that situation. She is vulnerable and dependent on him, and this is where the issue comes in. The woman is then framed as being stupid and paranoid and overreactive over nothing and making a big deal out of nothing. In a more morbid example that I actually think is way more disturbing, it's like on another level, is Beauty and the Beast, the original movie. The Beast not kidnapped, but held Belle hostage because he was going to hurt her father, so she said, I'll take my father's place. But that's obviously a really nasty thing for him to do, because she did not want to be living in his stupid castle. She wanted to be back in the village with her family, with her dad. So the Beast is very nasty and scary for doing that. She's genuinely scared of him, and he is her captor. She is not allowed to leave, you know. But the Beast keeps using violence and yells to try and make his point, but still he's giving her a beautiful, luxurious room, these household alive items, I guess, to talk to and to interact with. She's got pretty clothes, she's got food, but yet there's this power dynamic there, and they really should not be ending up together. And at one point he wants to dine with her, trying to knock the door down, and he's screaming at her like, come to dinner. And then when she says, no, I'm not comfortable with that, he's like, well fine, then starve, don't eat anything at all, which is really mean. I remember one point she went into the wrong room, she went into the West Wing, and he literally screams at her and starts smashing the furniture. And the worst part is she's seen as responsible for his well-being because she is the only thing that can cure him of his curse. So suddenly she's placed in this fixer role of needing to not only make him into a better person and change him and bring him out of his shell, but also help him, even though she does not owe him anything. This kidnapper in this trope should be punished for their actions and held accountable, but instead they are rewarded and given their happy ending, their fairy tale ending, by getting to be with the girl of their dreams. And that's why this pattern we're seeing in movies and books is so problematic. And finally, I want to just touch on the I can fix a man theme. Fixing anyone. It could be your kidnapper, it could be an abusive man, an emotionally unavailable man, a cheater, a playboy. 365 Days is similar in a lot of ways to 50 Shades of Grey, except the big difference is that Massimo does not seem to understand the concept of consent even a little bit, whereas Christian Grey kind of seemed to know some basic things. And it pains me to say this, but 50 Shades of Grey is actually a better movie. I do believe that 365 Days sends some questionable morals around a woman saving a man, being his savior, making him a better person and taming him even if he's having actually abusive tendencies. A constant pattern in movies is that men who have an entire lifetime of being abusive or creepy or controlling will change in sometimes the space of a few days if they just meet the right girl who has the opposite of their traits. She's often a good girl. And even in 365 days, Massimo has been fixed in some ways because he's being a lot more gentle and a lot more loving at the end of the movie than he was at the beginning, even though he's a freaking member of the mafia. That doesn't even make any sense. The way they're behaving are the red flags that they might end up being abusive to you later on. Like they're controlling you, they're isolating you, they're getting verbally abusive with you, or physically kind of restraining you or intimidating you. All of those, you know, when you look on domestic helpline centers, signs that you should get out, that people will often share around so people can know the early warning signs that they are in a potentially abusive relationship, or it will evolve into one that will be abusive. 365 Days glamorizes kidnapping and disempowering women. It glamorizes sexual violence. We don't see enough healthy, consensual and loving relationships in pop culture, the media, books, movies, and often if a guy is actually fun to talk to, respecting your boundaries, he's labeled as boring or not toxic enough, not interesting enough, not dramatic enough. I really hope that you did enjoy this video. Make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell and all for all notifications so you know whenever I post more commentary videos about movies. I've got some more I want to react to, and when the sequel comes out, it will take a while, but I might watch it, who knows. I will see you guys for my next video.